There's a pretty one, Ulysses. There it is.
Hello BookTube, I'm Sean the Book Maniac. Welcome back to my channel. I'm so delighted to be back outside this morning. It's 9 a.m. in Tokyo on a Wednesday morning, and this is the first bit of sun that we've had in more than a week, at least when I was available to do a video, so I'm pretty stoked. Today I'm going to do another book tag. It's called the Superstitious Book Tag, originally created by My Reading is Odd, and I saw it the other day on Books Are My Social Life's channel. Both of those will be linked in the show notes. I love the quote at the beginning of this tag description, which is by MICHEAL Scott. I don't know who that is, but the quote is, "I'm not superstitious, but I am a little stitious." Aren't we all? That would be a fun video to do sometime, Japanese superstitions. So let's get going on the list. It's a short tag, so maybe I can ramble a bit, since I'm getting all these complaints about my videos not being long enough. The first one is Friday the 13th is an unlucky day. What book have you been unlucky to read? Well, I could go on for about 3 hours. I will pick the worst book I've read to completion this year. I bailed on a lot of stinkers too, but this one I did finish. It was I had to read a Latin American novel, I think. I can't remember what the task was for one of my book challenges, but the novel is How I Became a Nun by Cesar Ira. I don't remember when it was published, but fairly recently. It's fairly new, like within the last 10 years, I think. And I was attracted to it because of the cover. See the cover? The synopsis said it was about a boy who was actually a girl or something. So there was kind of a vaguely transgender protagonist. So I was intrigued. And it was very short. But without a doubt, this is probably the worst book I've read in this millennium. I hated everything about it. With every fiber of my being. So, the boy-girl, I don't know how old she is, but maybe pre-adolescent. The protagonist is with their dad, let's adopt the modern pronouns, at an ice cream shop, and is eating ice cream, but the ice cream is tainted with cyanide. So the child gets very sick. The father becomes enraged and murders the owner of the ice cream shop and goes to prison. The child, the protagonist, recovers. There's nothing else in this horrible little book that made any sense or was the slightest bit interesting, entertaining, edifying, or... Did I mention that I hated it? Number 2. Rabbits' feet bring good luck. What new release has you hopping with excitement? Well, hopping isn't, I guess, the operative verb for the synopsis of this novel, but I've talked about other novels that are coming out that I've been excited about, but to do the same books in all the tags, it gets a little boring. But this is definitely another one that I'm excited about. I believe it's coming out in either January or March of next year, and the novel's title is The Mermaid Mrs Hancock, and the author has a long name, Imogen Hermes Gower. It's her debut. I don't like to read too much about what novels are about. That would be an interesting video to make sometime too, because I almost never read the plot summary on the back of the book. Certainly not until after I've read the book. But anyway, what I gather about this is that it's set in the 18th century and somebody brings a mermaid to London. The two main characters are a courtesan and a merchant, and there's some kind of a battle over control, I don't know, but something to do with a real live mermaid. And the story was inspired by a art object of a Japanese mermaid that's in a famous museum in London. That's all I know, but I know that there was a battle for the publication of this novel, like a, bidding war, and went to Penguin, I believe. So I'm going to put a link in the show notes to an extract from the novel, and I did skim it just to confirm that the writing is quite literary, so I'm quite interested in that. Hopefully it'll be better than the Essex Serpent. Did I say that out loud? Oops. Number 3. A cricket in your house brings good luck. What book villain would you never want to find in your house? I'd like to turn this question on its head, because for me, it would be much more apt or accurate to say that I wouldn't allow a book that has a villain in it in my house. Fiction that has one-dimensional villains doesn't interest me. I like some gray in heroes and villains. Thank you very much. One example of this would be Barbara Kingsolver's novel that is a very well-loved novel that I thought I loved when I read it 15 years ago. I don't remember, many years ago. The Poisonwood Bible. But the more I reflected on it, as I grew older, I just thought, that father, that was just ridiculous. What a one-dimensional villain. So now I hate it. In my memory, I haven't reread it, but my memory of it has completely changed. That's why I don't like fantasy or any of the genre stuff. Murder mysteries, it's all villain. Like, I'm not interested. However, if we're talking about nonfiction, that's a very different matter. So, I just finished a book of political journalism, a memoir by the NBC TV reporter Katie Tour called Unbelievable, My Front Row Seat to the Craziest Campaign in American History. I think you know which campaign that refers to and which villain, so that would be my pick. And the birds are getting noisy. I hope that doesn't mean they're going to start shitting on me. That would be just my luck. Number 4, step on a crack and you'll break your mother's back. Show us your most beaten up and battered book. Well, I only have one because I refuse to keep or buy or treat my books so that they become beaten up. I'm very fussy. I do enjoy browsing in used bookstores and buying books there, but they have to be in pristine, almost brand new condition, or I won't buy them. So I only have one, and it was inherited from my aunt who died about 8 or 9 years ago, and it's a Henry Miller book, The Smile at the Foot of the Ladder. I'm actually showing you the back, but that's the same as the front, so it's a lovely cover, isn't it? The artwork is interesting. And she had this in her possession, and it came to me, and it is dust jacket's very worn. I would never buy a book like this, but I have it, I guess, for sentimental value. I've read the first 2 or 3 pages and didn't like it. It's got lovely artwork in the book. It's a beautiful book, inline illustrations, published by New Directions. And this edition is 1958. I couldn't get into the story at all. I've never read any Henry Miller and probably safely could keep it that way. But that's my most battered book. Funny the stares I get from people, Japanese people walking by, going, what is he doing? I actually had one man come up and talk to me, and somebody asked me once about my Japanese language abilities. They're just terrible, embarrassingly bad for having lived in the country for 8 years. But I could manage to explain to him what I was doing, and he was very warm and friendly. It was sweet. Number 5. Garlic protects from vampires and evil spirits. What book are you too scared to read? So, I don't do horror. I'm reading a horror novel now, which I'm quite enjoying, despite it being a genre book. And I'll talk about that in my wrap-up or whenever. But no, I'm not interested in scary books. Don't mind supernatural horror movies. So my spin on this would be intimidated. What book am I too intimidated to read? I hope to overcome this intimidation factor, and maybe Steve Donahue has some comments on this, but look at this monster. Abraham Lincoln, A Life, 2-volume set by Michael Burlingame, boxed set. There's a little fly in there. Each volume is about 950 pages, so that is intimidating. I bought this, paid about almost $100 for it, 12 years ago, 10 years ago, after I read, I always blank on her name. It was made into the Lincoln movie, A Team of Rivals by Doris Kearns Goodwin, which is probably the best work of popular fiction I've ever read. I love that book so much, and it just made me so... I was already very interested in Abraham Lincoln, but it just exponentially boosted my fascination for him. So I bought the biggest, thickest biography of him that I could find, Now I've lugged it all the way to Tokyo. A few years ago I cracked it. Read about 150 pages and really was enjoying it, but I was very much still in a reading slump and I didn't continue. It's a really heavy book to read. You can't carry it in your bag or take it anywhere. I'd probably do better with the ebook, but I thought it was really good. So, Steve, any comments on this? Should I not read this and read another Lincoln biography? Looking forward to your thoughts. But intimidating. 6. Breaking a mirror brings 7 years bad luck. What book could you read for 7 years? Well, maybe none, but I guess I would. I guess it means like continuously and finish it and then immediately start it again and read it and read it. My 2 favorite books. Maybe one of them or both of them I could do that. And number 1, obviously, is Do Not Say We Have Nothing by Madeleine Tien. Certainly, I want to reread it at least once, but reading it for 7 years, well, maybe. And the second favorite book is A Constellation of Vital Phenomena by Anthony Mara. Again, definitely want to reread it at least once, but these are 2 books that I could see rereading for the rest of my life. But 7 years continuously, I'm not sure. Interesting that my 2 most favorite books, I'm going to go on a little bit of a digression here. My 2 most favorite books are books I've read in the last 2 years. I find that my reading tastes have changed so much as I get older that I don't count any of the books that I loved 10, 15, 30 years ago as being my favorite unless I reread them. Having new favorites, and these 2 are number 1 and number 2. Oh, that looks like bird poop. It's on my paper. Jesus Christ. I'm having a turf war here. I don't know what that is, but it doesn't look very auspicious. An apple a day keeps the doctor away. What book has the best description of food? I struggle with this one because I'm not a foodie, and I probably read about food in so many books. I guess one that just occurred to me, I hadn't thought of it when I was preparing for this tag, is Barbara Pym writes about food. Not in a really, I don't remember it being in an overly descriptive way, but in her first book, Some Tame Gazelle, the Maiden Sisters are cooking broccoli cheese, and when I heard when I read the name of that dish, what is that? So I Googled it, and then I started making it, and it's actually quite delicious. It's like macaroni and cheese, but no macaroni, just broccoli. It's good. And then I put a little spin on it and added cauliflower. And cauliflower and broccoli cheese is really good. And then the last spin I put on it, which made Kenji fall in love with me 10 times more, was I added seafood to the casserole dish, and he loved that so much. He said, "It's the best dish you've ever made." And just chunks of salmon, not canned, but fresh salmon and shrimp, and maybe, I just got a comment from Ink and Books. Oh, I can't remember exactly his name, but Ink and Books, is that his name? Anyway, you all know him and love him. If you don't, you should. Just flashed up on my iPad as I was filming. What was I saying? Anyway, he loved the dish that I made with the seafood. Chunks of salmon and fresh shrimp and maybe squid. It's delicious. But my original answer for this category was the Pat Conroy cookbook, which I just finished on audio the other day, and it was my first Pat Conroy, so I fell and he narrated the book. I totally fell in love with him. He's such an emotional writer, and you may have noticed, I'm a pretty emotional guy. My response to what I read is primarily emotional, and sometimes that makes me shy away from overly emotional writers. It's kind of a projection, or not just a projection, but I safeguard my sense of what is an emotionally satisfying read, and that precludes overly sentimental writing or fiction by whatever my standard, by whatever my definition of sentimentality is. But I really responded to Pat Conroy, and these essays were about food, but I thought very tangentially. That I think a foodie would read this book differently than I did. Yes, he talked about different meals and different food, but I don't remember any of that already. I finished it a few days ago. That was not what was memorable to me. It was the relationships that he was describing, using various recipes or food as a jumping off point that I still carry. And one of the first essays in the book, and I don't even remember how food tied into it, was just an amazing essay about his relationship with his father as he was writing his first novel, and he was getting his father to, without his father knowing what he was doing, help him murder his father as a character in the novel. That was just incredible. But I don't remember what the food was in the essay, so no, I'm not a foodie. Before the shit hits the booktuber, I'm not going to tag anybody. I don't know if Steve Donahue has done this. Here you go, Steve, in perpetuity. And anybody else who wants to do it. I've tagged a few people. I feel like I'm overburdening people that I know on BookTube by tagging them. And I'm too shy to tag the, other than Steve, the really big names and the famous ones. So I'm not going to tag anybody. If you want to do this, consider yourself tagged. And I hope you're having a lovely day. How did you feel about the booker? My disappointment was that Ali Smith didn't get it. I felt she was most deserving, but I'm not devastated that George Saunders got it. I didn't like Lincoln in the Bardo very much, but I didn't hate it. It's a very well-crafted piece of fiction, and most people loved it, so I'm not... There's a certain novel, what was it called? Entrance East or something. If it had won, I would have thrown an absolute temper tantrum, so at least I'm not having to deal with that this morning. I hope you have a lovely day. Thanks for stopping by.